Yeah, you picked up a new toy the other day.
I did, a beautiful new toy.
Okay.
So Brandon and I were already saying that we needed to talk about the Deck of Many Things release from D&D. Right out of the gate, pleasantly surprised with this release. I was not sure what to expect exactly, but I was fully ready to be like, oh, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's difficult to use, etc., etc. That is not how they've set it up at all. So let me start with what's in the box? Come on.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
I will say, just in the fullness of information, I bet what's in the box is cards that are not offset, bent, won't lay flat, because the release on this was delayed by a couple months because of really crappy production.
Yeah. So the cards are gorgeous. They have kind of a gold leaf on the sides, which is very pretty.
And clearly, from previous decks of many things that came out in earlier editions, they have shifted to more of a tarot style presentation with this.
Yes. They talk about in the book that's included, the opening section is about the history of the Deck of Many Things and some of its different iterations, which is really cool. I love stuff like that. And it's a nice introduction piece to what is ostensibly a very large piece of D&D lore. I have one complaint about the cards that I noticed as I was interacting with them before we were getting on the call, which is that because the gold foil on the edge is so soft, it's really easy to accidentally mark your cards.
Oh, well, gold is the softest metal.
I don't know if it's actually gold. It looks very gold.
They just got like a gold marker and went around the side.
It's gold crayon. That's what it is. So that's a really mild complaint, but it is something to look out for, because if you've got a player who's trying to draw a specific card, maybe you need to draw for them to make sure it's random.
Okay.
So the cards are beautiful. The art as always, absolutely gorgeous. There is also a book on all of the cards inside the Deck of Many Things and some of their interpretations, which is kind of like it's like a coffee table style book. It's the much wider format. And it just has descriptions of the cards and kind of goes into what the card is and defines. So you're actually intended to use this a lot like a tarot deck in part of the sections of the game. And they even have a section near the front of the book that is about if your players want a tarot style reading from the Deck of Many Things for their campaign, you can do that. They also have a way that you can dungeon generate using the cards.
Oh, that's cool.
And so you put like two cards together to show where the players start and what starts the adventure. And then you've got like, here's hurdle 1 and hurdle 2. And here's what the bad guy's lair is like with 3 cards. And then here's what kind of bad guy you're ultimately going up against with 2 cards. And so it's a way for you to be able to generate new dungeons and new adventures without having done any legwork in the beginning. And admittedly, it's a framework. And given that it's interpreted a lot like tarot cards, there's some vagueness to it that allows you to make choices and make decisions about how things will actually turn out. The big thing they cover that I was really excited to see in the book, in the initial section, they talk about how many a campaign has been completely derailed by someone being like, oh, I'm going to draw from my Deck of Many Things.
It's like a hand grenade.
This either goes really well for me or really poorly. And either way, the GM is going to have to do some real scrambling to figure out how to make all this make sense. They have a guide for how to use the Deck of Many Things in campaign without having it be, they described it as pulling the lever on the cosmic slot machine. Which I really appreciated. And what they suggest is when the player draws the cards, those are indicators of things to come, not necessarily things that happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get some of that, like they draw like the tower or the throne, and that can generate something that they're going to interface with soon, but not now.
Right. So, I mean, really, it sounds like in this iteration, calling it the Deck of Many Things is more of a legacy nod than, accurate, because it's not like, because I had a Deck of Many Things from second edition. I had the box that it came in, and it had like 300 or 400 cards or something like that. It felt like
Good
in there,
Lord.
and they were all things, right? So in that situation, it's like, well, I'm going to pull from the Deck of Many Things, and then you pull it, and it's like an Uno draw 4 or an Uno reverse or something like that. And this, it feels like it gives the GM a lot more agency to incorporate that stuff into the adventure and make it more of like an offer from the player rather than here's what you're doing.
So yes and no. They give you rule options for both. But recognizing that having the Deck of Many Things be an instant, like, oh, you drew the knight. There is now a loyal warrior who's fighting for you by your side immediately. Mm-hmm. They recognized that can be disruptive to a campaign.
Uh-huh.
And so they were like, so you can do it that way.
It's like materia.
Or
here's my summon.
Yes, and sometimes you summon something very bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you options. You run it the way you want to run it. You don't even have to run the Deck of Many Things as it comes in the box. They've got alternate suggestions for here's how to remove some of the cards that will cause more chaos at your table.
Mm-hmm.
So you can run a safer Deck of Many Things.
Mm-hmm.
They even have rules in there for if you want to create a Deck of Wonders or a what's the name of it? Shoot. There's another kind of Deck of Many Things. I think it's a Deck of Many More Things, which uses a 52 card playing deck to give you your various options.
Yeah, I would love to
complete
call that
with jokers.
The deck of other stuff.
So all of that I thought was very cool. I really appreciate it when they give you something that you can then utilize to build things inside your own campaign. But they didn't stop there. They then give you a feat that is basically a subclass called Cartomancer, which is a it allows
maps?
Apparently cards. You use cards for magic.
Oh, I thought you said Cartomancer, so I was thinking like cartography.
I mean, that's how they wrote it, is Cartomancer.
Okay.
I assume that they did their Latin research. There's 2 new backgrounds. So you can start as a player character who either found a Deck of Many Things and was favored by it, and you got you get like a lucky feat, or you're skilled in something, or you have a benefit starting out. Or they have another one called the Ruined, which is where you were doing really well for yourself, and then you found a Deck of Many Things, and everything in your life got flipped, turned upside down.
Yeah,
and
got sent across the country to live with your aunt and uncle.
Exactly. So those are kind of cool. And they've got flexibility built into them. There's like 3 different things you can choose from as far as like starting out what the benefit of having that background is. And each of them is meant to be story-based. So the idea is if you drew from the Deck of Many Things and the reason your life went terrible was because it ended up sending people after you who were hunting you, then you get the alert feat, because you got to keep your eyes open. You got to be aware of your surroundings, because you got people that are after you. And then the idea is that you are then rebuilding what you once had as a character, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
There are so many magic items in this book. I'm not even going to start listing them because there's just like dozens and dozens of magic items inside that are related to the deck of many things in a variety of ways.
And aren't there like multiple books in there?
So there's 2 books.
Yeah, if you want to describe the packaging a little bit.
The one book comes kind of like your typical setting module, that sort of setup.
And it looks like, did you get the alternate cover?
I did. I usually do.
I hate those because they don't look. I refuse to buy alternate covers because they do not look good on my shelf.
And then the other is the card reference guide.
Mm-hmm. So
which is that kind of coffee table book I was talking about.
Right. So does the card reference guide just sort of have each card and then a blurb about it, sort of describing it?
Yes, there's a little bit of like, this is where they describe things like the how to make a dungeon out of it, or how to do tarot readings using the cards, those sorts of things for your player characters.
Right.
But then it also has descriptions of the cards and the sorts of things you might gather from drawing that card as either an outcome or something that immediately appears or something that appears in the near future or something like that.
It's interesting how they went high end on this because, if you think about it, cards as an accessory, it's only natural to have the explanatory text on the card, right?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, but it looks like from what you just showed there's just so much for each card that they would have had to fill like one whole side of it with that, which I guess they could do. They would just eliminate a uniform back for each one, and it would just be like the dragon or the knight, and then on the flip side, it would show all the information for it and everything. It's interesting because I wonder if part of that was to differentiate it from, not make it so much like MTG, because that's weird to think about though, because they are trying to merge D&D more with MTG, like with some of the stuff they're doing in Magic with like D&D worlds and things like that.
I think the intent really here is to make it a lot like a tarot deck. Like lean into that tarot aspect as much as possible.
And that's what I'm saying by making it high end, because they're making a design choice there, which forces them to now have a nice hardcover book to explain the cards, because they're going all in on the thematics of the deck.
I will say they could have, in the rule book that they present, that's kind of a setting guide, they could have just had like 6, 10, something like that pages with card and then blurbs about what it might mean, card blurbs about what it might mean, and have that be something fairly clean. I think they did the separate book because they wanted it to be something where players can pick up the cards and then look, if they want, look at the various interpretations themselves, or the GM can be holding just the book for the cards to be flipping through and looking at interpretations as the players are drawing.
You're probably right. I still think there's maybe some element of what I was saying, and granted, I'm looking at it very much from sort of a production and business perspective on that. But I think you're probably right too. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
I think these things go hand in hand in this case. Additional things, there are a lot of NPCs and creatures in here. I think there's like 30 or something that are unique to the book, as I understand it. There's 3 factions that you can involve in your campaign, should you so choose.
That's interesting.
All of them are related to the Deck of Many Things in some way, as you might expect inside a book titled The Deck of Many Things.
Yeah.
The 3 factions are the Sun Bastion, the Moonstalkers, and the Heralds of the Comet. The Sun Bastion, I think, takes the most explaining. They're basically an enforcer group that has their own floating plane that has like a Spelljammer dock and everything connected to it. And their whole thing is that they track down people who are actively using Decks of Many Things and figure out if those people are going to try to use it for benevolent uses or for malevolent uses. And if they're using it for malevolent purposes, they try to take the deck back.
Okay. Do they redistribute it to a deserving person?
I don't I don't know. My understanding from what I have read, which I didn't read it in depth because I almost never read any of these books in depth, but my understanding is that in canon, the Deck of Many Things is kind of a mysterious artifact that appears and disappears on its own whims, to the point where people think that it might not be a magic artifact. It might actually be some kind of creature of its own.
Right.
With a sort of chaos element to it. But the one thing they do say definitively is that it was created by Istis, the goddess of fate.
Okay.
So that's Sun Bastion. They're all about making sure you're not doing evil with them. The Moonstalkers are basically a thieves guild taken to the nth degree using multiversal travel. So
they're just popping in places and stealing stuff and popping out.
Pretty much, yeah. And the thing that's crazy about them is that they know when someone draws the moon card, not just that someone has drawn the moon card, but where that moon card was drawn. And so there's a tendency for them to just show up like a day or so later, suddenly. They've got a gateway in their hideout that, depending on the phase of the moon, goes different places wherever they're located. So if you're in Faerun, for instance, it might be like Neverwinter or Baldur's Gate or Waterdeep, et cetera, et cetera.
It'll shift around that world depending.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And obviously, you as the GM know this, but your players are like, how do they keep showing up all these places? And like, their ability to travel is limited. It's just not as limited as you might think.
Did you outline exactly everything that came in the package yet?
Yeah, I think so. It's the cards, the 2 books. There's a nice, I will say, the carrying case for the cards and the book that explains the cards. It's pretty sweet. It's like a nice little foam inserts there. Keep the cards safe.
That's really nice.
Oh, sorry, that's not foam. That's cardboard. But still, and
it's
then you
nice
put the book on top to hold it in place. Yeah, it's nice that it's there. And then this goes into a slipcase. So, like that, the cards, the setting guide, that's everything that comes in the box. But like, I don't know, those cards are so nice.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like presentation-wise, they really sort of knocked it out of the park on this one. So I can understand now why they were just so hinky about how when the cards came out poorly last year, and they're like, nope, we got to blow up the plan and just delay this by it delayed it by a couple months, because wasn't it supposed to come out in November, October or November, something like that?
I think it was supposed to come out in like August.
Okay.
And then the card issue happened, and so it didn't come out until like December.
Yeah.
Like I recall it being like 3 or 4 months that it ended up getting pushed back, because they had to basically go, we received the first set from the publisher and we had to go, this is garbage.
Yeah.
And all of it needs to be reprinted.
Yeah. And like at the time I was saying like, oh, it makes sense that they don't want to push out like a garbage product or anything like that. But I also I didn't fully understand exactly how they were packaging and presenting this whole thing. So like understanding that they were going high end with it, that makes a lot of sense. Because if it was just going to be, here's the book, and then also you can also have these cards, right?
It's tough to see on camera, but the cards all, there we go. The cards all have this like cool metallic sheen to the art on the front even, which is just like incredible. It's gorgeous. I am all about it.
And how much would this be for the average person buying it at manufacturer's suggested retail price?
Oh Lord, I think it was 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was not cheap.
And
it was not cheap at all.
Here's where I'm going to get myself in trouble. Because I'm going to say that's reasonable in the current climate of how much Wizards is charging for these things, right? So let's use that as our baseline.
Right.
I've complained that they're releasing books that they're like just books that they're charging us like $60 for, right?
70 now.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a book that comes with a very nice set of cards that you can use for many different things in your adventures and campaigns, for generating encounters, generating dungeons, creating offer scenarios to come up with stuff with your GM in sort of more of a collaborative storytelling way. Like, based on the presentation that they're doing, they didn't half-ass this. I'll give them a lot of credit for it. They didn't half-ass this at all. So
$110 MSRP.
Okay. So that comes with, does that come with digital access as well?
If it did, I didn't notice it.
Because the physical on the D&D website, or on D&D store, it's Deck of Many Things digital and physical bundle is $109.99. So that might have to do with the fact that they had to release digital first because of the actual physical card delay or whatever. But let's say around $100, and 100, 110, something like that. I think it's a good price point for what they're offering, which is essentially a luxury item within a niche of luxury items, right?
Right.
If it was just a book, because when they first, I think it was like more than a year ago when they announced that they were doing Deck of Many Things in 2023, and initially it sounded almost like they were just taking the Deck of Many Things and just turning it into a book. So it's really not a deck.
They made it sound like they were just going to do a setting guide, which you and I were both like, what? How does that work? What?
So seeing how they pulled it off, I'm actually going to say, I think this is an appropriate use of the price point to give customers something extra for it. Right.
Yeah.
Because if it had just been a book, I would not be all about this. It's like the Spelljammer set I've got over here, right? So three hardbacks in the slipcover, and I got a GM screen with it. That's great, but I would have appreciated some extras for how much it cost, right? And I won't get into my box set argument, but I feel like this is the modern day box set equivalent for an accessory. Like this is an accessory pack essentially, and they've given it sort of a royal treatment.
Yeah. It's gorgeous, and it's all of the art's really well done. The cards are well produced. I don't know, like 110 is a lot to ask of anybody, especially right now. But I'm really enjoying how gorgeous it is, and also they give you a lot of options for how to use it. So it's not just, oh well, here's Rime of the Frost Maiden. Here's the setting. Here's the adventures that are in it. Here's the NPCs that are part of those adventures. Have fun.
Yeah.
It's like, here is a bunch of tools, and if you want them, here's some settings and some adventures and some quests and some NPCs to go along with those.
Well, here's something to think about. Since we've talked about how the 2024 release schedule for D&D isn't super exciting, at least to us, compared to some of the stuff that came out last year, right? So maybe it's sort of a kismet situation that the production delays forced the physical release of Deck of Many Things in 2024. So now, if you were like holding off on purchasing stuff because you wanted to see what was coming out in 2024, like maybe you don't want a new PHB, maybe you don't care about the Vecna game or anything like that. This is something, if you could only buy one D&D thing that's coming out in 2024, just based on what I know right now of everything and having not seen it, which can be a huge landmine that I could come back to eat in 6 months, I would say Deck of Many Things is probably what you want to spend your D&D budget on this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous. There's a lot of good content in it. I will wrap up talking about what else you'll find. The third faction is the Heralds of the Comet, which are basically a doomsday cult. Mm-hmm. You don't need a whole lot more than that to understand what they're about. They literally are doing the whole like, oh, well, what you need to do is give all of your possessions and anything that you love to the cult.
You see, the spaceship will be coming in 3 months, and we all have to be ready for it.
The draw of the cult for folks is that the reason why life is hard and why they're suffering in life is not because you did something. It's because the universe is flawed and unraveling.
Okay. I can understand the appeal.
Yeah, you could see the draw to that.
Yeah.
And so there's ways to make them antagonists. There's also ways to allow your party to join the cult if they so choose. That's it for factions. There's a ton of NPCs and creatures. I won't really get into those, but they are beautiful, beautiful monstrosities in of themselves. And then they've got a bunch of adventure areas with quests. So I already talked about the Sun Bastion a little bit. There's a Sealy Market, which is basically a Feywild carnival / flea market. So there's a lot of like fun little tents with goofy little things you can purchase, and the whole thing's overseen by a dragon.
The D&D
who just really loves the Feywild.
The D&D con marketplace.
Kind of, yes. There's a place called Harrow Hall, which if you draw the throne card, can appear in your adventure. And Harrow Hall is basically a haunted castle where rumor has it if you die inside the castle, you can't leave.
If you die in the castle, you die in real life.
Your spirit is trapped there for all time. Longtime fans of the Deck of Many Things will already be familiar with the Donjon Sphere, which is basically a huge dungeon in space with like robots that regularly work inside of it. And then there's a few more places, but the last one that really excited me was the House of Cards, which is a dungeon that is the Deck of Many Things. Which I was like, that we're getting meta now. I like this.
This is great to hear, because of timing and everything, I wasn't able to actually take a look at the book before we started talking about it. So I'm great, because you're usually pretty critical about these things. So it's great to hear a positive reaction to it. It sounds great to me. Like I said, I'll just reiterate, like if nothing else excites you about tabletop this year, you should probably pick this up, unless you're like super committed to something third party. But the fact most of the third parties are all using 5e now, so you could just use this there.
This is also one of those that I think would be a lot of fun for a table. Obviously, the physical assets kind of make it more of an in-person game sort of object. I don't know what the digital assets look like. I imagine they're similar, but I don't know. I haven't looked at them. But if you alone cannot afford it and you're like, well, I can't afford it, so I can't get it, like reconsider the concept of having the table go in on it, because I think parties would also have a lot of fun with how this is set up, how it's built, being able to do like GM led campaign fortune telling. To be like, there's a tall, dark, mysterious stranger in your future, and you're like, well, we're playing Curse of Strahd, so
I would say I think that's probably a good idea to at least bring up, but make sure you're a well-established group. Make sure you record everybody's contributions to it. As a very good friend of ours who's a lawyer, but he's a cool lawyer, likes to tell us, contracts save friendships.
It's true. Make sure you have some kind of agreement about what happens if you have to split the kids.
Like a buyout clause or something like that. But that works out to maybe like $20 a person. If you have 5 people. And
there's a lot in here for a GM who just wants stuff to be able to throw in their game. And the thing that's beautiful about it is they specifically outline, here are ways to include this in your campaign to make it more impactful and still hold to your campaign as it is. Which I love that stuff. That's my favorite thing when D&D does stuff like this, because when you give me a fully established area with fully established quests and fully established NPCs, I then have to do the work of figuring out, well, how do I rip the things that I really like out of this? Because I'm probably not going to run the book as the book.
Yeah, exactly. So are we about wrapped up on Deck of Many Things? Is your recommendation also a buy?
I'd say go out and check it out. It's pretty cool. You can get the adventure book by itself, as I understand it, and then build your own Deck of Many Things at home. But The cards are beautiful. So if you, like me, are a big sucker for collector's edition type items, you're definitely going to enjoy this one, I think.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but let's go ahead and wrap it up with the usual call and response. If you want to find us on Discord, bit.ly/Goblin Discord. I'm Wave Randalore pretty much everywhere. Josh is Black Cloak DM pretty much everywhere. If you enjoy the podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on your podcatcher of choice, please telephone, telegraph, tell a friend about the Goblins and Growlers podcast. Word of mouth not only is the greatest Ludicrous album, but is also the best way to grow our audience and have more people find out about it. Use that social proof on your friends. What else? Oh, the newsletter. We have a monthly gaming newsletter that talks a lot about indie games, recommendations, news items, just catch up stuff like that, and also sort of a roundup of all our podcasts and things. What else, Josh?
Well, you can find the newsletter on our link tree, linktr.ee/goblins and growlers. Mm-hmm. And then finally, check out our sister show, Quid Pro Roll, on your podcatcher of choice, where I play a sneaky half-elf rogue whose gang got brutally murdered before the adventure started. And Brandon plays an over-the-hill professional wrestler who's trying to regain some of his glory days by going out and killing chromatic dragons.
He's also a triple multi-class monk bard barbarian, which was a stupid decision in retrospect, but I'm stuck with it now.
You need to see if Alex will let you visit Withers and respec yourself.
All right. I think that's it. I think that's all for us. If you're just watching this on YouTube and you're not subscribed, please give us a subscribe. That would be pretty fantastic because we're trying to do more stuff with the YouTube this year and just make sure more content gets out there. But otherwise, we'll catch you all in a couple of weeks. And don't forget, if you're interested, to check out the Tales of the Valiant GMG Kickstarter, because it's going to be open for several more days after you hear this. But other than that, we'll catch everybody in 2 weeks.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.